How are you guys doing? Today is Saturday, January 29th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile for Jose Abreu. The elite starting first baseman for the Chicago White Sox turns 35, and with this episode, I'm going to point out his accolades, his achievements, and point out his impact on the MLB and baseball as a whole on a game-to-game micro level. And I'm going to point out his effect on what he's done for baseball as a whole. He was one of the best players outside of the United States. He had an entire career, and then once he established himself as one of the best players in Cuba, he would go to the United States and build himself up to even becoming the American League MVP. I always go into my spiel about how many players are trying out to play for a finite amount of spots in the MLB. But of course, to establish yourself as a full-time starter at a position is one thing. Of course, to establish yourself as one of the best at a certain category in your position is another. No, but he's just been one of the best all-around hitters that this game has seen ever since he stepped in. He's done it in two different countries, and I have no doubt in my mind that Jose Abreu is one of the elite baseball players that's currently playing right now. So, for a little bit of context, he's originally from Cruces, Cienfuegos, Cuba. Sorry if I butchered the name. He would go on to establish an entire career playing in Cuba. He would play in Cuba for about 5 years before he would go on to establish himself as one of the world's best players. He would become the MVP in the league, in that Cuban league in 2010-2011. Through his 5 seasons, he would go on to hit around 300, and he would go on to make Cuba's national team roster for its World Baseball Classic and its other international tournaments. After his treasured years in Cuba, which I would get into for another episode, but because my show deals specifically with the MLB, I'm just going to work with the MLB. He would come to the Chicago White Sox already as an established star in baseball. He wouldn't be in the minor leagues for that long. He would get signed in August of 2013 by the Chicago White Sox. He would go on to make his first major league hit in March of 2014. So he would go on to literally play for them at the beginning of the next year. And his very first season would be his age 27 season in 2014. In his rookie season, he would play 145 games in a season where the Chicago White Sox finished with a 73-89 record. Jose Abreu would be awarded a Silver Slugger and would be named the Rookie of the Year in his very first year. In the 145 games he played, he finished with 176 hits. That is 31 more hits than games played. He would finish with 80 runs. This would be one of his few seasons in which he's had one of his few seasons in which he's had 80 runs in a season. He would finish with 35 doubles on the year. He would finish with a couple of triples, 36 home runs, 107 RBIs. Not to mention that he would go on to finish with 317 batting average, which to this day is tied for the highest batting average he would ever finish a season with. This is the highest batting average he would finish a full season with. The other time he mirrored that was his MVP season in 2020. He would go on to finish with he would lead the American League in slugging percentage actually in his rookie season with a .581 slugging percentage. This is the first time that he did it. And then combined with his .383 on-base percentage, he finished with a .964 OPS, which is the second highest OPS he's ever recorded in his career. And in addition to all that, he would finish with a .173 OPS, leading the American League, the only time that he's done that, meaning that he was 75 percentage points better than the average player when it comes to the OPS stat, which is on base plus slugging percentage. He would go on to finish with 323 total bases, one of 4 seasons in which he would finish with at least 300 total bases on a season. And in addition to being named a Silver Slugger in the Rookie of the Year, he was named an All-Star for the first time as well. He would finish 4th in an MVP race where Mike Trout from the Los Angeles Angels would eventually go on and win. And even though the White Sox had not made the playoffs that year, Jose Abreu had established himself as a definite star at that very moment in the league. His second season would be his age 28 season in 2015. In his second season in the league, he would play 154 games for a Chicago White Sox team that finished 76 and 86. They won 3 more games since the previous year. In his second season, Jose Abreu would finish in the 154 games he played. He finished with 178 hits. That is 24 more hits than he had games played that year. He had 88 runs, which at that point was 8 more than his rookie season. He finished with 34 doubles. He had another season with at least 30 doubles. He finished with 3 triples, which at that point was a career high. He finished with 30 home runs and 101 RBIs, 2 consecutive seasons with 30 home runs and 100 RBIs. He would go on to finish with a 290 batting average, and he finished with an 850 OPS, which is almost 100 points lower than what it was his rookie season. And even though he wasn't named an All-Star, he still put together a very well-rounded hitting season for a Chicago White Sox team that didn't make the playoffs. He wasn't an All-Star that year, but however, he still, like I said, he put together a good season. His third season in Chicago would be his age 29 season in 2016. In his third season, he would go on to play 159 games for a Chicago White Sox team that would finish 78 and 84. They had won 2 more games than they had won the previous season, and Jose Abreu would go on to finish with 183 hits in those 159 games. This would be the first time he had at least 180 hits in a season. He would have 24 more hits than games played yet again. He finished with 67 runs, which is the least amount of runs he's put together in a season, excluding his MVP shortened season. He would finish with 32 doubles, 25 home runs, 100 RBIs, and he would finish with a 293 batting average, 3 points higher than what it was the last year. His OPS would finish at 820, 30 points lower than what it was the previous year. Once again, the White Sox were not a playoff team, and his numbers weren't jumping out the box. Jose Abreu did not make the All-Star team his third year in the league. This would transition into his 4th year in the MLB, his age 30 season in 2017. In his age 30 season, he would go on to play 156 games in a season where the White Sox would finish with a 67 and 95 record. They would go on to win 11 less games than they had won the previous season. Abreu would finish with 189 hits in those 156 games. He would have 33 more hits than games played, and those 189 hits are to this day the most hits he's ever had in a season. He would finish with 43 doubles, which is the most doubles he's had in a season as well. He had 6 triples, which is also the most triples he's had in a season. He would finish with 33 home runs and 102 RBIs, making it the 3rd time in his first 4 seasons in the league he's had at least 30 home runs. In the fourth straight season, in his first 4 years, in which he's had 100 RBIs, he would finish with a 304 batting average on the year, making it the 2nd time in his first 4 years he had a 300 batting average. He would go on to finish with a 906 OPS after he had a 354 on base percentage and a 552 slugging percentage, which at that point was the 2nd highest in his career, and to this day is the 3rd highest in his career. He would go on to finish with 343 total bases, which led the American League. This is the first time that he's led the American League in this stat. This would be the 3rd time in his first 4 seasons he would finish with at least 300 stolen bases on the year, or with 343 total bases on the year. And even though the White Sox didn't make the playoffs, and Abreu would hit season highs in almost every and most of his career stats, not to mention hitting for the cycle, being the first White Sox player to hit for the cycle since 2000. He would not be named an All-Star, and the White Sox didn't make the playoffs. But of course, this would transition into his next year following his 3-year All-Star drought. His age 31 season would come in 2018. He would play 128 games in a season where he was dealing with a few injuries here and there. He played 128 games in a season where the White Sox finished with a 62-100 record. They had 5 less wins than the prior season, and this would be the first time that the White Sox would have triple-digit losses since 1970. But of course, in this season for Jose Abreu, in the 128 games he played, he would establish himself as an All-Star for the 2nd time in his 5-year career. He had 132 hits in the 128 games he played, continuing his 5-year stretch since his debut of finishing with more hits than games played. He finished with 68 runs on the year. He finished with 36 doubles, which at that point was the second most amount of doubles he put together in a season. He had 22 home runs and 78 RBIs, which by this point was a career low. He would finish with a 265 batting average and a 798 OPS, both of which were his career lows at the time. Nonetheless, he was still an all-star and a Silver Slugger for what he had done on that Chicago White Sox team. After yet another season of not making the playoffs, which at that point was 5 straight years, this would transition to his 6th year on the Chicago White Sox. And in his age 32 season in 2019, he would play 159 games for a Chicago White Sox team that finished with a 72-89 record. They had won 10 more games than they had won the previous season. Jose Abreu would go on to play 159 games for that White Sox team. In those 159 games, he finished with 180 hits, making it the third time in his career he's finished with at least 180 hits in a season. That's the last time that he's done it as well. He would finish with 85 runs on the season, making it the 4th time in his 6-year career by that point he had finished with 80 runs in a season. He had 38 doubles, which to this day is the second most amount of doubles he's ever put together in a season. He would finish with 33 home runs, which is tied for the second most home runs he's put together in a season. And this would be the 4th time in his first 6 years he had at least 30 home runs in a year. And he would finish with 123 RBIs. That would be both a career high for him, and that would be the American League high in RBIs as well. This would be the first time he led the American League in RBIs. He would go on to hit his career high in strikeouts as well, as he struck out 152 times, which is less than games played, but only 7 less strikeouts than games played. He finished with a 284 batting average on the year. His 330 on-base percentage and 503 slugging percentage combined to an 834 OPS, which was 36 points higher than it was the previous year. He will be named an All-Star for the 2nd year in a row, for the 3rd time in his first 6 years as well. And once again, the White Sox have failed to make the playoffs, but this would this would be the last year since 2008 that they would fail to make the playoffs. So this would transition into Jose Abreu's 7th season with the Chicago White Sox. His age 33 season would be the 2020 season, which many will remember as the season that was shortened from 162 games to 60 games because of COVID quarantine protocols. Because they shortened the season, they decided to expand the playoffs. And in 60 games, because of this expansion, regardless of the because it's expansion actually, the Chicago White Sox, who finished 3rd in the American League Central, would go on to make the playoffs this year. In the 60 games he played, in making his very first playoff season with the Chicago White Sox, Jose Abreu would win the American League MVP in his very first playoff season, as he played 60 games for a White Sox team that finished with a 35-25 record. Looking at how he fared in the shortened season, he had 76 hits in 60 games. He led the American League in hits. He finished with 43 runs in those 60 games. He had 15 doubles. He finished with 19 home runs and 60 RBIs. He led the American League in RBIs. He was 2nd in the American League in home runs. He would finish with a .317 batting average, which is tied for his rookie season, where he run American League Rookie of the Year for the highest batting average he would put together in a full, in air quotes, season. He would finish with a .370 on-base percentage. He would lead the American League with a career-high .617 slugging percentage. This is the 2nd time he's done so in his career. The first time he did it was his rookie season, and he hasn't done so since. And he would go on to lead the American League in total bases for the 2nd time in his MLB career. He had 148 total bases in 60 games. And he would go on to lead the American League in plays where he grounded out into a double play. That was the 2nd year in a row that he did that. Once the Chicago White Sox would make it into the playoffs following Abreu's Silver Slugger and MVP season, they ended up losing their very first series to the Oakland Athletics. And looking at how this series this ended, the Rays out of Tampa Bay would make it out of the American League after they had the best record, and they ended up losing to the Dodgers in the World Series. But that is how Jose Abreu's first playoff season it went after he won his very first MVP. He would not be named an All-Star this season because they didn't name All-Stars, but considering he was named the MVP, I think it's safe to say that he would have been named an All-Star this season. And then this all transitions into his most recent season that he's played with the Chicago White Sox, where he would go on to play 152 games for a White Sox team that finished with 93 wins, 21 more wins than their last full season. And this would be the very first time that the White Sox would win the American League Central since 2008 when Carlos Quinton won the Silver Slugger for them. But in this 2021 season, even though Abreu would miss the All-Star game, he would go on to play 152 games. He finished with 148 hits. With this being his 8th season in the league, this would be the very first time that he would finish with less hits than games played. He had 148 games so he had 4 less hits than games played. He finished with 86 runs, making it the 5th time in his 8-year career that he's finished with at least 80 runs in a season. He finished with 30 doubles. This would make it the 7th time in his 8-year career he's finished with at least 30 doubles on the year. He finished with 30 home runs, which would make it the 5th time in his 8-year career he's finished with at least 30 home runs. He finished with 117 RBIs, which would be the 6th time in his 8-year career he's finished with at least 100 RBIs on the season. His 117 RBIs are the second most RBIs he's ever put together in a year. He would hit a career high in walks as he walked 61 times. He would go on to finish with a 261 batting average, which is towards the lower ends of his career averages. He would finish with a 351 on-base percentage, which is 19 points lower than the previous year. He had a 481 slugging percentage, which is 130 points lower than what it was prior. His on-base percentage was at .831, which is about 160 points lower than what it was his MVP season. And he would also go on to lead the American League in grounded into double play opportunities as well for the 3rd year in a row. But still coming off of this regular season in which he would finish 4th in MVP voting, the White Sox would end up losing in the very first round in the American League Division Series to the Astros, as the Astros went all the way to the World Series just to lose to the Atlanta Braves. And that leads us to where we are, as he is now 35, entering what could be another amazing season for the Chicago White Sox. This is a player who's failed to disappoint, and the only times he wasn't an all-star, it wasn't necessarily his fault. It was just rather than there were just other players that were doing what he was doing and probably doing so on better teams. But now he's an established superstar who's definitely proven that he's one of the best players in the MLB and can be when he's at his best and can most definitely be when he's at his worst. And I can't wait to see what this next year brings. I want to thank the ESPN, the MLB, and the MLB Reference websites for giving me all the facts and figures that I needed. I'm sorry for not giving the figures before he went to Chicago, because this show is mainly kind of focused on American baseball because I don't really know the Cuban baseball league that well. But with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to all 19 minutes of this piece. I hope all is well. I would recommend watching Jose Abreu if you get the chance. He's currently wearing 79 for the Chicago White Sox. Thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another piece tomorrow. And hopefully, if Jose Abreu is still playing at this level, I will come back with another piece this time next year to fill you in what's gone on over the last year. Thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another piece. Peace out.